Thank you for joining us with Ask a Historian. I'm Matthew Wilkinson, historian with Heritage Mississauga. And each week we invite you to send in your questions and we'll explore the fascinating stories of the city of Mississauga together. Like, subscribe, and follow us and stay up to date on all the heritage happenings with Heritage Mississauga. Joining us this week is City of Mississauga Ward 1 Councillor Stephen Dasko. And Stephen had a moment earlier this month in September in passing a motion at the city's Heritage Advisory Committee meeting to designate the former Lakeview Park Public School. And here to talk about it. This is it's not often. We don't have a lot of designations that go through every year in protecting a building, and this is certainly near and dear to you and your ward, and would love to chat about it. So thank you, Councillor Dasko, for joining us.
Pleasure to be here, Matthew, and this is an exciting time.
Indeed, and yes, we sometimes look at it in the microcosm of the ward, but I think always exciting for the city as a whole as well that we've protected a building, for a landmark building for future generations to connect with. And I'm just wondering if I as a HAC member, I was unable to attend the embarrassingly the September 6th meeting, and that was the first day of school, and there were some hiccups with school on our end. But I know that there's a discussion at HAC that ultimately led to the designation of the building. Can you tell us a little bit about what kind of spurred the decision to designate this structure?
Absolutely. This is not one that came new or as a surprise to many or any, I think. The building itself had been listed, and not just the building, the entire property is what I've been very adamant about. Because when it comes to our moving forward to getting it listed and then eventually the designation, I just didn't want to have the building, especially the 1923 building, unto itself designated. It was the whole property that was really the interest. And so what happened there was the listing was put on it in terms of the heritage listing for the property. And there were some negotiations going on for in between the school board and also Habitat for Humanity. And the hope was that we would be able to preserve the 1923 school, have that for some community and amenity space, have artifacts and items from Lakeview's rich history in there as well. And then what was really big for me would be to add on some affordable seniors housing in there as well. That was the real big push, and essentially the city became an intermediary, just the way legislation is written in terms of dispositions and things like that. So the way it was set up was the report had been written for the designation of the property, but it was agreed by all parties that we would wait until there was a deal that was consummated, and then the designation would go through, and that was in agreement by all parties. Unfortunately, the deal did not go through, so my first call was to the clerk, and this is where through the Heritage Advisory Committee, HAC, as you mentioned, and the first thing that I wanted to do was to make sure that we got rolling right away with the designation, and the school board was made aware of that as well.
And so I guess from that perspective, just to place it in its context, the building was a school. It operated, I think, until 2001, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in that realm anyways, and it's still owned by the school board, but ultimately this property will leave the school board and find a new home. So the idea behind designation is to make sure that the historic element of the school is preserved. So can you tell us, just maybe touch on the history of the school itself, just to paint the context of, its age and its connection into the community?
Well, it's the interesting, it is, talk about a neighborhood school with a lot of history and stories to tell. It's very interesting to hear stories from people in the community and other historians like yourself to tell stories about its rich past. And it's very interesting as well because we've got next year is going to be its 100th anniversary.
Right.
And yeah. It's really got some great stories to be told, and still talking to former teachers that were there, and so whenever the topic of the school comes up, it's very much welcomed, and it's folks always hold the school in such high regard. So these days, it's got the school intact with its I guess late 50s, early 60s add-on, if you will. Which you can tell the definite difference in both, and then as well, there's the back part of the school in terms of the playground area and the field, and that gets used a lot by the community to this very day. So, but it's very interesting to hear these stories when it comes to the school, and there's people that live in the area that are very much passionate and interested on its future and so for myself, in terms of my role as the councillor, I think it's imperative that we have that schoolhouse preserved and being a part of our community, because it's had a rich history in it, and I think there's a rich history or a rich future going forward with it as well.
Well, I'm just, you know, in my job, I look at dates and times and everything, but sometimes math is not my skill point. I'm like, oh, it is 100 years, 1923. You know, I'm just thinking, you know, off the cuff here, and I'll put myself in a corner on this one, but I think we need to do a program around its 100th year in terms of gathering stories, and perhaps we can work together and start a, you know, history gathering program just on the anniversary of the school. I think this would be, it's always good to mark milestones.
It would be really exciting. I'd love to work on that with you. And on top of that, I think a new, fresh, really cool comic book is in the makings there. Something tells me, Matthew, that would be amazing to do.
Well, you know where to pitch the idea.
Absolutely.
So we know that Lakeview is changing, that there are major developments coming, the streetscape's evolving. We know that. What kind of, how important is it to preserve a heritage building on a landscape that's in the midst of so much change?
It's imperative. It really is. I'm a big believer, and the Lakeview Park Public School. It's just yet another reminder that you need to know where you've come from to know where you're going. And with a lot of change that is coming to the community, still imperative to have a great Main Street that goes from Port Credit all the way out to the Toronto border, having it walkable, personable, and one that has great amenities and also character to it. And this is a building that is oozing with character, and on top of that, we're going through, as you mentioned, a significant transformation with our waterfront, and we have got 67 acres of new parkland that's coming in, right abutting the additional 64 acres of the Jim Tovey Lakeview Conservation Area. These are significant, and as we're going from that industrial past into a clean green future with a real forward mindset, you know, having the small arms inspection building and the school, those are just two gems that are just too important to slip through our fingers.
Absolutely. And you know, so many people you've mentioned already that have a connection in their own histories to the school building, but the potential for new generations to also connect in a different way to this heritage landmark. And so absolutely. I mean, I'm a convert already, and the idea that these heritage buildings can certainly play a role in the futures of our community, I think are important elements to share. Just maybe briefly, can you share maybe a couple of stories or memories that have been brought to you about the school, just kind of how it plays a role in people's lives and just having it here?
Absolutely. There's and they're always local stories, and that's what really makes it really special. There's a lady that lives around the corner. She's lived around the corner her whole life, and that was a school for her and her siblings. So they always talk about the school. There's also a few very good and dear friends, Luann and Lizanne. I'll just use the first names there, and these are they work there. Lizanne was a school teacher there, and she'll always talk about the times that she spent there, and also talking about some of the students that they still keep in touch with, yeah. Which is incredible as well. And that just, I think, really goes to show the importance of community, that in the sense of community that we do have, and institutions like the school have helped foster that. And it's just not the school building itself, it's the people that were involved with it. And these are the stories that need to be maintained and told. And a lot of that goes with the physical structure, because as soon as you penetrate the physical structure, you get to dive into just a rich history of what that school meant to so many people.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think there's a science behind a comment quite like this, but buildings, heritage buildings play a role in making connections within the community. And how many, many of our residents might be new, but many are multi-generational residents as well. And that building can provide a common link between the kind of that evolving community, that here's a place that memories are made and stories are made, and people make those connections in the community as they grow up. They become children, they become adults, they live in the community, they stay in the community, and they help make the community what it is today. And I think buildings can play an important role in that. So kudos for, I know it's not a quick process. I think you've been involved on this one for...
I've been at this for, I've been in office for 4 years, and it's been something that I've been working on for 4 years.
Right.
And it's certainly not an overnight process. The move to designate, for example, wasn't overnight, and a lot of the work that went into it. It's been countless hours on that, and worth every second of it, because we're at a spot right now where we're moving forward with the designation, but most importantly, in its next phase of life, it's so important that we get not just the building right, but the property right.
Yeah.
And also make sure that it's got a great spot in what is going to be the new unfolding history of Lakeview.
And I know from 4 years in, we have the designation passed now. I know we're not at the finish line. I know that that's some time to come, but this is a major step towards, finding a future for it. And so for that, I congratulate you on where we're at. And, I know with your firm hand, we'll be steering towards a good future for the building, and, all fingers are crossed and all those sorts of things. But I'm sure there'll be some fascinating plans to come forward, particularly once the community is engaged in it as well. And so again, the former Lakeview Park Public School, built in 1923, designated by the City of Mississauga under the terms of the Ontario Heritage Act, preserving a landmark building in Lakeview for future generations as well. So with that, Councillor Dasko, thank you very much for joining us and for sharing a little bit of the journey that you've been on with this building. Again, thank you just for sharing your knowledge and your connection to this building with us.
Well, thank you so much, Matthew. Love the segment. Keep up the great work, and always loving to talk about all things local in Ward 1.
Well, I'm going to have you back on. We'll talk other things about local history too, because
look forward to it.
With that, thank you everyone for joining us with Ask a Historian. Remember to like, subscribe, and follow us. Stay up to date on all the heritage happenings with Heritage Mississauga. Keep sending in your questions, and we'll explore different stories of the City of Mississauga each and every week. And if you have any questions for Councillor Dasko, we'll have him back on somewhere down the line. History questions. Yeah. And with that, again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week on Ask a Historian.